Welcome back. Our apologies there. Our microphone stopped working right in the middle of my introduction to the last story, which we pick up now. Somalia's coronavirus lockdown has led to a huge increase in female genital mutilation, FGM, which is described by the WHO as all procedures involving the removal of external female genitalia or other injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. Now, those performing these procedures in Somalia have been going door to door, offering to cut girls that are stuck at home during the pandemic. That's according to the rights group Plan International, which adds that the crisis is undermining efforts to eradicate the practice in Somalia, which has the world's highest FGM rate, with about 98% of women there having been cut. FGM, which affects 200 million girls and women globally. In Somalia, the vaginal opening is also often sewn up, which is a practice called infibulation. For more on this story, we're now joined via Skype from Mogadishu by FGM activist Sadia Allin. Sadia, thanks very much indeed for joining us and keeping so late for us to be able to talk about this very important issue. This practice that happens in Somalia, is this something that's been passed down for generations?
Yes, it is. FGM has been a cultural practice that people, they view it as an essential part of girls' culture, gender identity, social obligation, and also precondition for a marriage. People have been using for centuries. And FGM has a long consequence for girls and their rights and makes them it affects them, their decisions, to their well-being, to their reproductive health, and it has absolutely no benefit for their health, and it just harms. And it doesn't have any religion association, but people, they perceive in that way. And it is really such a unfortunate. It is still legal, and we should be considering it as a most extreme manifestation of violence against girls, because it violates human rights, it perpetuates inequality, it discriminates girls, and it has a serious and long-term implication of girls' health, mental well-being, and quality of life. And most importantly, it rips away, it takes away girls' opportunity to unlock their potentiality as a human being.
All right, we'll talk a little bit more about the consequences of this practice, but just hearing you talk about something that's been there for centuries, and I guess this is part of the reason why it's so difficult to stop it in your part of the world, because it's something that's so much a part of the customs of the country. The authorities, you say it's still legal in the country, so nobody can be arrested for practicing this?
Unfortunately, yes. It has been a practice for a long time, but people have come to understand it is harmfulness, and people, they have been talking about as a harmful practice, and it is the right time for the government to stand up and protect the rights of the girls and adopt legislations that bans FGM practice in the country. And also we need to educate parents and families that this should be something that has nothing to do with the girls' well-being. It has nothing to do with the girls' something they call virginity. It is very harmful, and they should be empowering the girls. And we should not tolerate anymore. And girls, they have suffered quite long now. Yeah. And we should be condemning it as a human rights violation, which needs to be eliminated now.
How young are some of the girls that are mutilated in this way?
Unfortunately, from 5 to 11.
5 years old?
Yeah, 5 years old. And it's really sad when you look at the young girls who are playing outside, who doesn't absolutely have no idea what's going to happen to them. in the next few days, and where their body will be mutilated is the fate of their mothers and the family members. It's really sad.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the consequences of this mutilation. What the long-term damage that's caused. It can't be something that's not without lasting difficulties.
Yeah, actually, FGM does not end the instant pain girls they go through at the scene, but it has a long-term consequence for girls, and their right is to make a decision about their sexual reproductive health. The practice has no health benefits, and it harms girls in many ways, including their well-being, including their mental health, including their ambition, including their leadership, everything, and also education performance, because when you look at the girls when they came back from that procedure, they came back like their muscle, they've been suppressed, and they cannot even raise questions in class. And when they reach the puberty period, then they struggle with the menstruation, and then they lose classes and miss classes a week, every month, and that affects their performance in education, and that also attaches them stigma when they don't perform well and they drop education, and definitely that also impacts their future. And FGM also is, as it is considered something that's to do with marriage, and Somali culture, marriage is considered something that's socially accepted, socially strong as a social security and also financial security. So if we empower girls to become independent, to become educated, then they will make decisions for themselves, and they will be able to stand for themselves, and they will make rights that decisions that they decide, not that decisions that were decided for them.
I would imagine that there's quite a lot of stigma attached to this process, and that might preclude some girls from going to get treatment in later years.
It does, and actually we have seen from our experience working with the survivors, many of them, they just gave up to seek for medical, and they died, and some of them, they gave up to get married, because there's also issues for their well-being. There's some issues around the structure of their reproductive organ, and because they don't want to go for medical support, then they end up not getting married, and they lose something that they cherish to do, and it's really sad. And also, what we have also seen is if it happened that the woman, she is not the way they call it, sealed, then she will be thrown out of the house. And it is really very embarrassing, and also it impacts also for the other girls to come forward and seek for help, or to reject the practice. And I'm also appealing for the man. This FGM has nothing to do with women's virginity. It doesn't to do anything with that. So they have to accept the person is wholesome.
So with so much shame,
and also I'm calling
with so much shame attached to not having this procedure done, does that mean that there are some girls that are perhaps older who feel that they must go through this if they're going to be seen?
Yeah, actually I have family members experience where my cousin, she didn't do when she was younger, and then she committed suicide. So you can imagine the level of stigma that somebody can take her life because of that. And it takes time for this to be able to change. But what we're asking for the government is to adapt legislations that protect girls. And we continue raising the awareness of the public and the families, and to change their attitudes and behaviors as this practice as a harmful practice.
I'm just wondering, the attitudes of society with this centuries-old custom, is it starting to change? Are people starting to recognize that perhaps this isn't something that we need to continue in society?
Of course, today I wouldn't be able to talk about FGM as a harmful practices. When you look back in the days when I was growing up, it was such a noble thing to do for your child, and people, they used to celebrate about it. But today, people are thinking as a harmful and talking about as a harmful. It's such a big step forward. But what we need is a real action. While we are changing the attitude and behavior and the perception of the practice, but we need action. Girls continue to die. Many of them, they don't make it in the procedure, and they die in the scene.
What is the government saying? It's still legal, but when you make these representations and go to them and say, we've got to stop this act and these procedures, what is the response you get from the authorities?
The response is varied, but mostly they committed and they show acceptance. But when it comes to action, that's what we are lacking. We need action. It shouldn't be a tokenism. We need action. So the government, if they are really honest about their political proposition of ending FGM, then they should come up with the legislation that abandon the practice, so it protects girls and stops those practitioners going door to door, knocking doors, asking to cut for girls.
All right. Is there treatment available later on in life, perhaps, to fix some of this damage?
No, there has been some clinic procedures that can repair, but it will never be the same. It will never be the same. It's just like repair, but it's not fixing. And the girl's life and her body, it will never be the same. And it is something that we can stop. It's something that we can end. It's something that's not necessary. It is something that those girls should not suffer at this age and time. 21st century, girls should not be bleeding the integrity of their body. They should own their body. And also it is to do with the deep-rooted gender inequality that is around controlling women about their sexuality, about their decision-making, about their ownership. And if you look at the ownership, if somebody cannot own her body, then the expectation for her to own property, to seek for leadership, to lead the country, is really difficult. So it is like muscling girls from the very young age, and we need to address that as a violation of human rights, as a violation of girl rights and women rights.
Sadia Allin, thanks very, very much indeed for joining us and bringing this story forward and highlighting the challenge that many young women and girls are facing in your country and other parts of the world. And we certainly wish you strength with this fight. Thank you so much indeed for talking to us. Thank you. All right, that's Sadia Allin with the NGO plan, which is working to try and eradicate female genital mutilation. As many as 200 million girls and women globally are brutalized in this way, and in Somalia the prevalence there is believed to be as high as 98%. And listening to her, she says that you're never the same again, and sadly it's still legal in Somalia, and so the authorities might be listening, but as she says, action is what's required.